right, folks, quick review here. Line 9, what's going on there? We won't do the whole thing, but I just want to make sure we kind of have a feel. Go ahead, Rudy.
Line 9, that's going to be like the title on the first, first header.
Okay, yeah. So let's get a little bit more technical. So what I'd like to hear is something like we're creating an H1 tag. That H1 tag is going to have an ID attribute set to top, right? And then inside that, what do we have? Some text that just says Italian food. Exactly. All right, cool. Let's come down here to line 11. Griffin, what's happening there?
We're inserting an image to the image tag and we're giving it a description of classic meatballs.
Okay, good. Source is telling us what exactly?
That's where we got the image from.
It's like, where does this thing live on the internet, essentially? Yeah, exactly. Good. Lydia, line 13, what was happening there?
We're creating an ordered list.
An unordered list, good.
An ordered list with 5 lists, with 6 list items.
Exactly.
And the first one is pasta. And the second item is pizza. So
Pasta, pizza, risotto, calzone. Trying to sound Italian, but I'm not doing a good job. All right, line 22. Nick.
We're creating an ordered list which gives each of the line items numbers.
Good.
Which, when you go from line item to line item, it's first step, second step, third step, and so on.
Perfect. Great. Line 32. Andrew.
So on 32, we're creating an anchor tag.
Good.
And in that anchor tag, we have a link to Olive Garden.
Good. Yeah, so the href attribute is telling us where do we want this link to go to when we click on it. And then this is the actual clickable thing, that Olive Garden text. Excellent. Down here, table. Dante, tell me about that one.
So table, you have the T head, which below that you're creating the table row.
Good.
In those table headers, you have first column, second column, third column.
Excellent.
You want to do the T body?
Yeah, sure.
For the T body that goes below the T head, those also have table rows. But in those table rows are table data, and that one's first data, second data, third data.
Good. So hopefully this kind of makes sense. Up in the head section, that's where we have our actual TH items. And you guys could see, we'll take a peek at our page again. These were styled a little bit differently than the actual table data, right? You'll see by default your browser is going to put those table headers in bold to make them stand out. Table data, that's just for the stuff that's inside the main part of the table. Okay, then we have this div. Nick, what's a div all about? We talked about that a little bit.
So the div tag is essentially you're just marking something off as its own section.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So div is just short for division. It's saying here's just some block of content. That's it. Nothing, like it's a very generic kind of wrapper in HTML. Good deal. So now our page still looks like this. Not terribly exciting, right? We probably want to make it look a little bit better. So we're going to bring in something called CSS. Does anybody know what that stands for? Very good. Nice. So you guys are going to hear a ton of different acronyms while you're here at the boot camp. And ultimately what that means is that some styles that we can write in one part of our style sheet can potentially affect other styles as well. And sometimes this can get pretty tricky to sort of manage because you think that you're trying to style one element, but lo and behold, the styles that you're applying are not working. And that can get quite frustrating. CSS is a bit persnickety, to say the least. All right. So let's say we wanted to style this entire thing. I don't really like the fact that it's going, everything goes all the way across the page. I want to kind of bring that out from the left and center it a little bit. So right now, my body element is essentially, it has this width of 100%. But I'm saying I don't want it to be 100%. I actually want it to occupy only some part of the screen. So let me show you one way that we could change that. I could create a style attribute on the body tag, and then inside that style attribute I can specify the different rules that I wanted to apply to it. So if I said width is 900 pixels, and then I saved that like that. Let's refresh that. Now notice how this text that was going all the way across now is being cut off, right? So now it's respecting the fact that I said I want this thing to be 900 pixels. But the other thing I was saying is that I also want this thing to be centered too. I don't want everything to just be jammed over to the left side of the page. So the way that we can potentially center this thing is by applying some margins. We can apply a left margin and a right margin, which will, assuming they're equal, it will center my body. So the way to do that is margin, and I'm going to say 0 and then auto. Okay? So what the 0 is saying is that I want my top and bottom margins to both be 0. And then I want my right and my left to both be auto. Okay? Now I could be a little more explicit about this if I wanted. I could say something like margin top, set that to 0, and then margin bottom 0, margin left, auto, and so forth. Right, auto. All right, so let's save that and let's take a quick look at our page. There we go. So we've got it nice and centered on the screen. That's good. However, I don't really like this way of styling things. This is called inline styling. So you can see when we're looking at our page here, imagine if we had a lot of these types of styles throughout the rest of our content. It tends to kind of clutter things up, right? And now we're mixing not only the structure, which is just our HTML, but also the styling with it. So it's generally a better practice to keep those two things separate. Okay. And if I want to do my styling, there are a couple ways I can do it. One is that I can create an actual style tag. Up here in my head, just create this little style tag, and then I'm going to grab all these styles that I wanted to apply to it and put those inside this style tag. However, you can see that my text editor is telling me, whoa, something's totally wrong. See all these little squigglies here? So what happens is when we're writing CSS, and we're not doing it using inline styling like we were before, we basically have to tell our CSS which element or class or ID, and we'll get into those things in a bit, which thing am I trying to target with my rules? Okay? So if I want to target my body, I can just say body, and then inside that, notice how I opened up a curly brace there. And then usually you'll see that these separate rules are going to be on different lines. Okay? And then you'll have a goodness, what the heck am I doing? I'm trying to space it out a little bit for readability, but let me just go doop doop. There we go. Okay, and then we have to close off this block with another curly brace. Okay? You can also see how this is infinitely more readable, right, than what we had when we had all those styles that were kind of like in one long string like that. Well, now we've got things separated. You can see exactly where everything's there. So what I'm doing is I'm saying I want to target this body tag, and then the rules that I want to apply is I want there to be a width of 900 pixels, margin top 0, margin bottom 0, and then both of these margins will be auto. So what auto is doing is it's saying whatever space we have, basically we're just going to evenly distribute it on the right and the left. So if my screen is 1400 pixels, and I said this should be 900, well, that's a difference of 500, right? So that means I should have 250 pixels of margin on either side. Okay, I'm going to simplify this to what we had before, so I'm just going to say margin 0 auto. Any questions about this? I know this could be confusing. No? Okay. Very well. So what else do we want to do with our document? Still not looking very exciting. Maybe I want to change the font style or something. I don't really like this serif type of font. Or maybe I do, but maybe I want to change it. So inside here, I can say font family. Oh, not family. Sans serif. Okay. Okay, you can see that changed all the items in here. Does anybody know why it's changing everything on the page?
Because all the text is inside the body.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. All right. Now that we've done kind of a style element inside of our document, let me show you another thing where we actually put it in a separate file. So we'll have a dedicated CSS file for this particular document. So let's grab our styling here. I'll just create a new file, paste this in, save this, and we'll just call it intro.css. Okay, notice how the syntax highlighting is working in here now. So instead of doing it here, I'm just going to remove all of this, and I'm going to create a link tag up here in the header of the head of my document. And notice how it's saying rel equals style sheet, so that's what I want. The href, again, is going to be the location of this resource. So where am I finding this CSS file? Since it's in the same directory that I'm in, I'm just going to put the actual name of the file. And I should be able to refresh that, and it's still working exactly as it was before, right? All right, any questions about that, using an outside style sheet? Pretty straightforward, right? All right, cool. What other kinds of things might we want to style? So let's say I'm going to get rid of this style attribute because we're not using that anymore. Okay. So let's say that we wanted to target all H1 tags. I wanted all H1 tags to have a specific color or something like that. The way that I can do that in my style sheet is going to be largely the same as when we did our body tag. So I can just come down here and say H1. And then inside my block, I'm just going to specify a color of blue. Okay. There we go. That changed that. So again, if I create another H1 tag on the page, wouldn't really be a great idea to do this, but for now, I'll just go like this. Some other food. Okay. It's working exactly as expected because it's targeting every single H1 tag that's on the page. Everything turns blue, right? All right, so let's get rid of that guy there. Cool. What other things could we do with some with the header. I could probably change its size too, right? So let's try that. So let's go back to our style sheet here, and we'll go H2, font size. I'm just going to pick something really big so it's obvious. We'll say 32 pixels. So there we go. Now you can see that that my H2 tag is actually the same size as my H1 tag. Right? So by default, the browser is saying H1 tags will be 32 pixels in size. Okay, and maybe I want my H2s to be red for some reason. There you go, pasta and red, right? Cool. All right, so that's one way that we can target elements, is we can target them by the tag name itself. It's not the only way, though. So another way that we could potentially target elements is we could use an ID. Okay? We have something on the page that does have an ID. Let's go to it. So my H1 has an ID of top. Let's create something for that. So I'm going to say top. What the pound symbol means here is that I'm targeting an ID. Okay? So let's pick some other color for that. We'll say color green. Let's go back here. Whoa. Can anyone tell me why that just happened? Yeah, so right now what's going on is we have two different selectors at play, right? I've got a selector that's selecting my H1 tags, and I've also got another one that's selecting an element with an ID of top. So as you guys can see, using an ID is ultimately considered more, quote, specific, okay? It's more specific in terms of CSS, so it's going to apply that style, the one that applied to an ID of top. Okay, that's all good. A third way that we can select elements, so again, these are called selectors. A third way that we can select elements is we can use what's called a class. Okay. So let's see on this page what we want to style. Maybe I want to style this unordered list, and I don't really like those bullets. I mean, I just don't want any bullets at all. So I'm going to give this UL element a class, and we'll call that class no bullets. Okay, now inside here, I want to target that class. So what I'm going to do is use this little period here to say we're calling out a specific class. So we're calling out no bullets. And what I'm going to say is list style type, set that equal to none. Okay, that should take my bullets out. There we go. Looks kind of weird though, because there's still some sort of margin and padding on the left, right? So now I'm going to show you guys something that you're going to be using all the time that you're doing web development, and it's your developer console in the browser. So if I right-click out here and click on Inspect, you'll see here that when I hover over the element, it'll basically show me kind of how much space it's taking up on the page, and then it'll also show you what styles are in effect for that particular element. Okay, so if I go to computed here, you guys will see this little box over here, which we're going to talk about a little bit more tomorrow. But underneath that, it would tell you again all the individual styles that apply here. So you can see I don't have any margin or what's called padding either, which means that is probably being applied at the unordered list level. Okay, so if I click on unordered list, you see how we have some margin going on there? Margin block end, margin block start, padding inline start. Okay, so let me just go in here and let me say padding 0. We'll talk a little bit more about padding as well. Margin 0. Okay. Okay. So you see how that kind of took away all that empty space that was created over on the left side of my list. All right, and since we're kind of already talking about margin and padding, let's just let's get a little bit more into it. So here, notice this little box that they're showing us here. So this is what's called the box model in CSS. Basically, the way this works is that at the innermost level, that's where this particular element holds its content. Okay? So that's what you see there. Outside of that, we have this thing called padding. So the padding is basically the space between the border of this element and whatever content is inside it. So if I wanted there to be more space, I can create some extra padding. So right now, for instance, this LI item right here has no padding. Let's say I wanted to increase that. So I'll come down here, and for my LI item, I'm going to say padding 15 pixels. Okay? So hopefully you guys can kind of see what's happening here, which is saying content is inside this, but now it's created this 15 pixels of padding between it and the border of the item. Okay? And you can see that over here in the box model. It's just saying we've got that 15 pixels all around. What if I wanted this thing to have some kind of a border as well? So I wanted it to look like each thing was sort of a separate element. Well, I could specify that down here. I could say border 1 pix, solid, green. Okay. Do you guys see how it's being doubled up here as well? So the border doesn't really collapse. Each one of these elements still has a border of 1 pixel, which means that right in here, we've got these areas where there are 2 pixels. Right? All right. Questions on padding? You guys all get padding? This makes perfect sense? Somebody's bound to be confused.
I don't have questions yet.
Say that again?
I don't have questions yet.
All right, that's cool. Perfectly acceptable. All right, so the other thing that we're going to talk about too is this idea of margin. So padding is the space that's inside the element before we get to the content itself. There's also this concept of margin, which is the space outside the element. Okay? So if I want each one of these elements to kind of push away from the thing that's above it, I can set some kind of a margin top. So we'll say 15 pixels on that too. Okay, so now we have these individual boxes, and you can see that they're creating that top margin of 15 pixels. One kind of helpful thing that you guys can do as well, I'll show you this little handy trick just in case you're kind of getting stuck with things. you can set a border on everything in your HTML, which should very clearly show you kind of where everything is. So I can use this asterisk here to essentially target everything on my page. And I can say border 1 pix solid black. Okay. So what's cool about this is now we can see where everything starts and ends. So you can see this header tag, this h1 tag, its borders are all right here, right? And then this h2 tag also has borders here. Why are these guys not right next to each other? Anybody know? One of you guys knows. Well, so again, this by default your browser is going to create some styles for you. And some of those styles include adding some margin to these elements. So if I hover, or if I inspect this H1 right here, let's see what happens. See, it's showing us the margin that's being created. So it's creating both a top margin and a bottom margin. And if I go to the computed over here, it's telling me the top margin is 21.44 pixels, same thing on the bottom there. So that's what that is that H1 tag has this margin by default. Okay. All right, what else do we want to style? What if I wanted to change the width of this image? Maybe I didn't want it to be that big. Okay, so what we might want to do, in this case, I probably don't want to just target all images. Why not? Yeah, the different images might have completely different widths, or I might want them to look different ways. So maybe I might want to give it some kind of a class. So let's just say class equals meatballs. Go into here, dot meatballs. Oops. Okay, and we'll just say we'll give it a width of 400 pixels. And there we go. We've resized our image, so that's working as expected. Cool. What if I wanted to, let's see, what if I didn't really like this default link style? Maybe we could target those guys, right? Because that sort of generic blue link. Question, yes.
When you adjust the width of the image, does that automatically adjust the other, the omega 2? Does HTML do that for you?
Well, I'm sorry, was it adjusting what?
When you adjust the width of the image,
Got it.
adjust the height of the image as well, like automatically?
Yeah, it did, because we didn't explicitly say that we want a particular height and a particular width. Now,
So-
if I specified that, we could potentially distort how the image looked. So if I say,
Try and keep the aspect ratio that it's at 90.
exactly, so if I go height, let's say I set a height of 400, well, that should look pretty weird, right? Yeah, you can see that it looks all distorted, expanded out. Yeah, good question. So it will maintain the aspect ratio unless you say otherwise, right? Okay, so let's say that we want to target these links because we don't really dig the way that they look now. I'm going to say A, okay? So again, that will target all anchor elements. And then inside there, I'm going to say text decoration none. And that means I want to take off that underline that's on the bottom of those guys. So here, kind of hard to see, but it is gone. And I'm going to comment out our border trick here because we don't need that right now. Okay, you see my links don't have anything on the bottom of them. I'm going to try to give them a bottom border, though, maybe in a different color, so they'll sort of stand out. Maybe I'll give it like an orange bottom border or something like that. So let's go down here. We'll say border bottom. And I'm going to say 1 pix solid orange. Oh gosh, can you guys even see that? Because I can see it, but it seems sort of, right? All right, maybe I'll pick a different color. We'll say, yeah, all right, purple. Cool. And then the other thing I want is I don't want the text to be that typical blue color, so maybe I'm going to say color black. Okay. You guys see that okay? Yeah. So now my text is actually black, and I've got this little border on the bottom. So it does kind of look like it's a link, but not too special here. What if I wanted the link to kind of do something special when you hover over it? So maybe I wanted it to change size or change colors or something like that. Here's how I could do that. I could say A colon hover. And what that means is that I'm specifically selecting it for a particular state. So when that A element is hovered over, what do I want to happen? So maybe I want the font size to be 20 pixels, and I want the color to be red. Refresh that. There we go. Same thing down here, right? Yeah, pretty cool. Sort of seems like we're getting a little bit of interactivity here, but again, we didn't even have to use any JavaScript yet. This is just all CSS. Okay, and I can do the exact same thing on any one of these. So if I wanted the these list items to do something special when I hover over them, I could select them in the same way. So let's see, what do we want to do? Li hover, and then inside this, I'm going to say background is black, color white, and then I'm going to say font style bold. Okay? So why is that not applying for me? Did I refresh this? Oh, there we go. Okay? So that can give you some hover effects as you just kind of like hover around on the page. What else do we want to do? Question over there? Rudy? Good. Maybe we want to sort of frame this image in some particular way. Maybe I want to give it a border and sort of separate it from its surroundings a little bit. Let's see. So let's go to our meatball style, and we'll say border 1 pixel solid light gray, and then I'm going to say padding 15 pixels. Okay. Yeah, that did not come through. Forget the light gray, I'll change it. I like how it looks on my screen though. Oh well. Black it is. Okay. So now you guys can see I've sort of framed my image, right? I gave it that border and then I specified that padding, which pushed it away from inside. All right. Any questions about any of this yet? Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to just briefly mention is going to be about this box model. again, we're going to talk about it a little bit more tomorrow. But when we specify a width by default, it's saying I want the actual content inside this element to be that way. Generally, that's not going to be the way that you want to style things. You probably want the width to be based on wherever your border is. Okay? So there's a special change you guys can make to do that. So if I come up here, just uncomment this, still don't need my border, but I'm just going to come over here and say content, oh geez, box sizing is the property name. I always forget this. Okay. By default, the box sizing is going to be set to content box, which means, you know, however much space the content itself takes. But I actually want my sizing to be based on the size of the box. So I'm going to say border box. Okay. So now when I specify this width, let's see if it's doing what I told it to. If I hover over this, you can see how the entire element, the entire image element, is only 400 pixels wide. Versus if I remove this property right here and I refresh, now how big is it? Now it's 432 pixels wide. Because the content itself is going to be 400 pixels, and then it has to add the margin, or the padding, not the margin. So I've got 15 pixels of padding on each side, so right there, that's another 30 pixels. And then it also needs to add the 2 pixels for those 2 borders. Okay? So now it's 432 pixels wide. But generally, you guys are going to want to style things in terms of the borders themselves, not the content that's inside the element. Okay, so that's where this box sizing comes into play. There we go. Cool. So if I have no questions, that means we're going to go through this. Yes, perfect.
When do you know when to apply a class versus an ID? Are they interchangeable? Are they only specified for certain things?
Generally, I would say you can steer clear of using an ID unless you are absolutely certain that that is the only element that you're trying to target on the page. I would say typically you're going to want to use classes. The other thing about using IDs that makes them a little bit not cumbersome, but a little bit brittle, is that because they have such a high specificity with CSS, it can be difficult to override those styles. If you want to override them in some other area, well, you've got that very high degree of specificity. Yeah. All right, cool. So let's start up here. Andrew, take me from line 1 to 4 in our CSS file here.
So we needed
So we actually didn't really create anything, right?
It's just
But
like
what this
pertains to
asterisk is just saying is I want to select everything. That's,
right.
yeah.
So we selected everything and we made a border with a 1 pixel solid black line, and then we
Notice that that's commented out though, right? So that's why it's not actually taken. Yeah, I commented it out because we don't need it anymore. I was just showing you guys that little trick. Okay, cool. Next.
then box sizing, so a border box.
Okay. What does that do? Oh, yeah, script.
It specifies the content to go to what you set the width to.
Well, yeah, so what it's saying is that when I target an element and I say I want the element to have a width of 400 pixels, I want that to apply to the entire element, not just the content inside of it. Which, if I didn't specify this, it would be the content inside that was 400 pixels. But here I'm saying I want the element itself to be 400 pixels. Okay. Otherwise, it would just be the content inside, which is the picture. The actual image. All right, cool. Next, let's do the body. Sean.
So for the body, we are changing the width of the margins to 900 pixels, so it spreads out to fill at 900 pixels. And
Well, it's not really filling up 900. I mean, it was already filling up the entirety of the page, right?
Yeah.
So now we're kind of shrinking.
shrinking it down. Okay. And for the margins, we're taking out the sides, and that's going to center it. And the font family is changing the style of the font to a sans serif.
Good. So that means we're taking away the sans serif. So on these margins again, I want to make sure we understand what's going on here. That first number 0 pertains to which margins?
The
No.
no, the top and bottom.
Top and bottom, exactly. Okay. And then auto pertains to what?
Does that make it spread out to the left and right as well?
So auto means this is going to apply to both the left and the right.
Okay.
Okay. So if I wanted to spread that out and be and again be a little bit more explicit, I could do it in 4 pieces. So I can say my top bottom is 0, or I'm sorry, my top margin is 0. My right margin is auto. My left margin is 0, and then my did I say left? I meant bottom. It was totally mixed up. Sorry. Okay, so if I'm looking at it now, this is saying our top margin is 0, our right is auto, our bottom is 0, and then our left is auto. Okay, and this should look exactly the same. So if I save this and go back to our thing, you see nothing has changed at all, right? So that's the order in which these values are applied. If we do 4 different values, it goes top, right, bottom, left. Okay, cool. Next, we've got meatballs. Nick, you want to do that one?
So we're targeting the ID that we set in the HTML file of the meatballs.
You sure it's an ID? So that dot tells us it's what? Class, right?
Class.
Okay, cool. All right.
We're setting the width of the image to 400 pixels. We're creating a border around the image of 1 pixel that's solid black. And then we're adding padding of 15 pixels in between the edge of the image and the border.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So again, because of that, the box sizing property that I applied above, it means that the entire image element is going to be 400 pixels, which means that the image itself is now smaller than 400, right? Because I have to subtract the 1 for those, or actually 2 for those 2 borders, left and right. And then I also have to select the padding, the left and right padding, which is going to be 15 pixels. So if I subtract all of that, means I need to take 400 minus 32, which is what? 368? Yeah, so again, if we look at this image and we hover over it, like that, you see if I actually hover over the link there, it's telling me, yeah, can you see that? It's saying that the width is 368, so exactly as we calculated. Cool. All right, let's keep going. Lydia, line 18 to 20, I should say.
Was selecting the H1 element,
Good.
and then set the color to be blue.
Good, exactly. So we're not, and keep in mind, we're not just selecting the H1 element, we're selecting any H1 element that's on the page. So potentially there could be more. I'd say don't put more than one H1 on a page though, because again, that's like the most important heading. It's what the page is about. Cool. Line 22 to 25, Diana. Good. All right. 27 to 29. You have Dante.
You're targeting the ID top and changing the
Very good. Nice. No bullets. 31, Griffin.
We're targeting the class no bullets, and within the class no bullets, the style tag removes the underlined portion.
Not the underlay. It's actually removing the bullets.
Oh,
Right.
I'm looking.
Yeah, you're
It's
thinking
removing-
of the actual anchor.
Yeah, we're removing the bullets.
Good.
Then we're shifting over with the margin. We're shifting over the text because we just removed the bullets, and then we're shortening. Is it the space between the content with?
Yeah, we're
We're
decreasing it to 0.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're saying there's not going to be any padding anymore. So the unordered list part normally has some padding inside of it, but we've taken that out so that now the content should go to its edges, right? Excellent. 43 to 47. Who haven't I called on? Everyone? All right, let's just keep going around then. Go ahead, Andrew.
Alright, so we have the list covered,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the background changing to black,
Good.
and the color is white, and then the font style we're changing to gold.
Yeah, cool. It's kind of creating some interactivity for us. Very nice. All right. 49 to 53, Rudy.
We have our anchor element. I don't remember which text decoration we had. Can you set that to
Yeah, so a little help on this. For an anchor tag, what kind of text decoration does it typically have? It has an under. Exactly. So we're basically saying we don't want it.
and then is it we change to black, and then we make the borders purple.
Mm-hmm. So we're saying we want this 1 pixel solid purple border on the bottom. Good. Next, go to the back there in the corner.
For the
Wait, did I not call on Cole? All right, Cole, you're in. Sometimes I have trouble seeing people in the back in the dark.
That's changing what happens to the anchor tag when you hover over it. And
Good.
In this case, it raises the font size up to 20 pixels and changes the color of the text to red.
Perfect. All right. You guys feel pretty good about what we covered this afternoon? Seems like you guys are getting it really well, so I'm happy about that. Cool. All right, so when we stop the video, we'll